It started with a dress. A navy one, simple but elegant, hanging on the closet door like it was waiting for permission to exist. I had picked it weeks ago for my husband's company gala, the biggest event of the year. Nathan had always said it was good for appearances when we showed up together. Until this year, apparently. That Friday afternoon, I came downstairs in heels and a quiet smile, expecting we'd be leaving together. He was standing in front of the mirror, adjusting his cufflinks, wearing his favorite Tom Ford suit, the one that made him look like he owned every room he walked into. When he saw me, he barely blinked. "Aaron," he said, like he was already late for something important, "you don't have to come tonight." I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Don't have to? I've gone every year." He picked up his watch, slipped it on. "It's just, this one's for employees only. You'd feel out of place." End quote. That hit harder than I expected. Out of place? I built half of his company's legal foundation. I managed the contracts. My father invested the startup capital. But sure, I'd feel out of place. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Nathan, it's a gala, not a staff meeting." He sighed. "I just don't want to explain to everyone why you're there." That was the moment the air changed. He didn't even realize what he'd said. I looked at him, really looked. Perfect hair, perfect suit, perfect lie. Then he kissed my cheek, like nothing had happened. "Don't wait up," he said, grabbing his keys. "It'll be late." The door closed. The silence afterward was louder than anything. I sat at the kitchen island, the same spot I used to sit when he'd call me his lucky charm. I stared at my phone, half expecting him to text and say he was sorry, or that it was just a misunderstanding. He didn't. Instead, I poured a glass of white wine, opened my laptop, and checked the company's website. There it was. Summit Ridge Annual Gala, hosted by CEO Nathan Walker and Marketing Director Sophie Grant. Sophie Grant. His college ex. That name had been hovering around for months. Late-night calls, work trips, emails that sounded a little too personal. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was too sensitive, too suspicious. That's what women do, we gaslight ourselves long before anyone else has to. By 8:30, the house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. My navy dress still hung upstairs, untouched. The clock ticked like it was mocking me. And then my phone buzzed. A notification from Instagram. Summit Ridge Marketing had posted, "Cheers to another successful year." The photo was of Sophie, smiling under the chandelier, champagne in hand. And there, blurred but unmistakable in the background, Nathan, arm around her waist, the same Tom Ford suit. For a second, I couldn't move. It wasn't rage or even heartbreak, it was clarity. The kind that burns slow but steady. I zoomed in. The way he looked at her, it wasn't a drunken mistake. It was practiced, familiar, comfortable. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't cry. I just sat back and took a deep breath. Because the truth hit harder than any argument ever could. He didn't leave me out of the gala because I wasn't good enough. He left me out because I might have seen everything. That's when something shifted. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel powerless. I felt alert. Cold, maybe, but focused. I opened my laptop again, not to scroll, but to log into the company's internal system. I still had limited access from when I'd handled legal compliance for Summit Ridge. Nathan never bothered revoking my credentials because, why would he? In his mind, I was harmless. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. If he could humiliate me in public, I could at least remind him who helped build the empire he was now decorating with lies. One by one, I pulled up the financial reports. It started small routine expenses, vendor invoices, consultant fees, but then something odd caught my eye. A payment for strategic consulting, made to a firm I didn't recognize. I clicked again. The firm didn't exist. No address, no registration, nothing. And there it was, the first crack. Outside, I could hear the faint sound of traffic from downtown, maybe even the faint echo of the gala music if I imagined hard enough. I took another sip of wine. People think betrayal breaks you, but sometimes it sharpens you. I didn't plan to destroy him that night. I just wanted the truth. But once you start digging, you learn that men like Nathan never stop at one lie. That realization came quietly, without drama, just a steady, icy calm spreading through me. I stood, took off my earrings, and hung my dress back in the closet, not because I'd given up, but because I finally understood. This wasn't the night I'd been excluded from. This was the night I started taking everything back. And before I went to bed, I whispered one line that felt like a promise to myself. You said I wasn't good enough. Let's see what happens when I stop trying to be. If you've ever been told you weren't good enough, drop a comment. Tell me how you proved them wrong. And if you love real cheating stories and revenge stories where the woman takes back her power, hit subscribe. You'll want to see how this one ends. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The house was quiet except for the sound of the coffee maker. Nathan's side of the bed was still untouched. He hadn't come home. I poured coffee into his favorite mug and set it on the counter just to watch the steam fade away. There was something satisfying about seeing it cool, like watching the last bit of heat drain from a lie. At 7:12, the door finally opened. He walked in wearing yesterday's suit, tie loose, hair messy but too perfectly messy. His face had that fake exhaustion men wear when they've been somewhere they shouldn't. "Morning," he said casually, like nothing had happened. "Morning," I replied, just as casual. He poured himself coffee, not realizing he was drinking the one I'd poured an hour earlier. I leaned on the counter. "How was the gala?" He didn't look up. Long, boring, typical corporate nonsense. He smiled. "Did Sophie organize it?" He froze for half a second, just long enough to confirm everything. Then he shrugged. "She handled logistics. You know how she is efficient." Efficient. That was one way to describe her. He kissed my cheek like a politician shaking hands at a fundraiser and went upstairs. I heard the shower running. I pictured him washing off perfume that wasn't mine. While he got ready for another busy day, I opened my laptop again. The files I'd found last night were still open on the screen, those odd invoices and fake consulting firms. My gut told me this wasn't just cheating of the emotional kind. When he left for work, I didn't waste a minute. I started digging deeper, tracing the company names listed in the transactions. Every single one of them was a ghost. No tax ID, no website, no physical address. But the payments were real. By noon, I was staring at a spreadsheet full of fraudulent vendors. My chest tightened, not from heartbreak this time, but from disbelief. Nathan wasn't just betraying me personally, he was stealing. From the company, from investors, from my father's fund that had built his empire in the first place. That realization landed heavier than anything he could have done with Sophie. I could have forgiven an affair. But theft wrapped in arrogance? That was something else. My phone buzzed. A message from Lydia Morales, the company's senior accountant. We'd met at a few corporate dinners before. Quiet woman, always looked like she was trying to disappear. Her text said, "I think we need to talk. It's about Nathan. Please don't mention this to anyone." That was enough to send a chill through me. I replied, "Where and when?" She answered almost instantly. "Coffee shop across from headquarters. 6 p.m. The rest of the day crawled by. I kept the house spotless, folded laundry, watered the plants, small acts of control in a world that suddenly made no sense. At 5:45, I parked near the coffee shop, a quiet place with bad lighting and cheaper coffee. Lydia was already there, sitting in a corner, nervous hands wrapped around a paper cup. When she saw me, she exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath all day. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her voice was low, the kind people use when they know the walls have ears. "I can't say much here," she continued, "but Nathan's been moving money. Client funds, personal accounts, even offshore. He made me adjust the books." I didn't flinch. "And you did?" "I didn't have a choice," she whispered. "He said he'd ruin me. He said nobody would believe a junior accountant over him." End of crest. She slid a small flash drive across the table. "These are copies of the files. I've been saving them off-site." I didn't know who else to trust. I stared at the drive for a long second. It was small silver, scratched, harmless looking. But inside it probably held the kind of truth that could destroy everything Nathan had built. "Why now?" I asked. "Because he's getting reckless," Lydia said. "And because last night he told the board your father's investment wasn't enough to sustain growth." He's planning to liquidate part of the fund. That was it, the final spark. He wasn't just cheating me. He was using my family's name as a shield for fraud. I put the flash drive in my purse and nodded. If anything happens, you contact me directly. No emails, no office messages, only in person. Lydia nodded, tears threatening but never falling. I just want it to stop. It will, I said, but not quietly. When I left the cafe, the evening air felt colder than usual. The sky over Denver was turning orange, and the city lights were starting to flicker on. I sat in my car for a minute, watching people rush by ordinary people with ordinary problems. None of them knew that in one small office building downtown, the man who'd just told me I wasn't good enough was running a financial circus. I thought about the gala again. The photos, the music, the way Sophie leaned into him like she belonged there. I used to think revenge was loud, angry, but this time, it felt like something much quieter, something calculated. That night, Nathan came home late again. I was sitting on the couch, reading. He kissed my forehead. Long day, he said. Big client drama. I smiled without looking up. I can imagine. He didn't notice the calm in my voice, the kind that comes from already knowing too much. When he went upstairs, I opened my laptop once more, connected the flash drive, and started copying files. One by one, little digital confessions filled my screen. Invoices, transfer logs, private emails, a full map of his greed. The house was silent except for the hum of the laptop fan. And in that stillness, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. There's a moment in every story when a woman stops trying to fix what's broken and starts deciding what to burn down. This was mine. The next morning, I didn't cry, rage, or even look at Nathan. I made breakfast like I always did: eggs, toast, black coffee. He walked into the kitchen scrolling through his phone, half smiling like nothing in the world was off. That was fine. Pretending had become my favorite weapon. He sat down and said, I have an early meeting today. Don't wait for me for dinner. Of course, I said. You're always busy lately. He didn't catch the edge in my tone. People like Nathan never do. He grabbed his keys, kissed my cheek, and left. The second the door shut, I took his empty coffee mug and dropped it in the sink. The sound was sharper than it needed to be, but it made me feel something close to alive. I took out Lydia's flash drive and plugged it into my laptop again. The files were still there, clean, detailed, dangerous. Transaction logs, fake vendor payments, shell accounts under names that barely sounded real. It was the kind of evidence that could bury him. I knew I needed help if I wanted this to hold up. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I was about to become his worst possible opponent, a woman with a legal background and nothing left to lose. I opened a blank spreadsheet and started organizing everything. Payment dates, account numbers, amounts, wire transfers. Each line felt like a confession he never meant to give. Somewhere between cell D14 and E27, I realized I wasn't just documenting fraud, I was documenting my marriage. Every number had a memory attached. Dinners canceled, calls unanswered, weekends he worked late. By noon, I had a full picture. Over $3 million had been moved through bogus consulting firms. One of the accounts led to a trust fund registered under SG Ventures. SG, Sophie Grant. Of course. That was when the laughter hit me, not hysterical, just a small, bitter sound that came from deep in my chest. It figured. The man who told me I wasn't good enough had been using my father's investment money to impress his ex. I printed everything and locked it in a folder labeled Household Receipts. If Nathan ever saw it, he'd think it was tax paperwork. He never looked at anything that didn't involve his own reflection anyway. That afternoon, I drove to my father's office. James Porter wasn't just my dad. He was one of the largest investors in Summit Ridge. He'd always liked Nathan, or at least the version Nathan performed. My hands shook a little on the steering wheel as I parked. This wasn't going to be a pleasant visit. When I walked into his office, he was on the phone, but waved me in. He hung up and smiled. Aaron, sweetheart, everything okay? I need you to see something, I said, setting the folder on his desk. He frowned, flipping it open. At first, He didn't understand what he was looking at. Then his expression changed. Brows pulled in, jaw tightening. He read every page twice, silent. Finally, he looked up. "Is this real?" "Every number," I said. "Every account." He leaned back, eyes cold. "He used Porter equity money to funnel personal gains? And to pay for Sophie's marketing campaigns," I said. "There are invoices for jewelry, travel, even hotel stays labeled as client expenses." My father didn't curse often, but he did that day. "That son of a bitch," he muttered. Then, calmer. "You're sure you want to do this? Once this comes out, it's not just business, it's war." "It already is," I said. "He just doesn't know he started it." He nodded slowly. "Then we do it right. Quietly. You'll need to stay calm. We'll gather everything. Involve the board when the evidence is airtight." "Lydia Morales," I said. "She's scared, but she has everything we need." "Good," he replied. "Protect her. Whistleblowers like that don't last long when men like Nathan panic." I left his office with a strange sense of clarity. The humiliation I'd felt the night of the gala was gone. This wasn't about tears anymore. It was about precision. Back home, Nathan was already there, earlier than usual. He was in the kitchen, pouring wine like it was any other Wednesday. "You're home early," I said. "Client canceled dinner. Figured we could have one for a change." He smiled like he was trying to act human again. I smiled back, because that's what good wives do until they don't. We sat across from each other, talking about nothing. Stocks, weather. He mentioned a new expansion plan that sounded suspiciously like one of the shell accounts I'd found. I listened and nodded, pretending to be impressed. Halfway through dinner, he asked, "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" I looked him dead in the eye. "Never better." He smiled, relieved. That was the thing about men like Nathan, they mistake silence for forgiveness. After dinner, I watched him from the doorway as he went to his office upstairs. He was on the phone, pacing. "Yes, transfer it through Vision Partners." "No, she doesn't suspect anything." I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. He was right, I didn't suspect anymore. I knew. When he finally went to bed, I stayed up, writing down every word I could remember. Every phone call, every transfer, every lie. It wasn't revenge yet. It was strategy. I slipped the notebook into the same folder as the printed records, locked it, and placed it inside the laundry hamper. He'd never find it there. Standing in the dark hallway, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My face looked calm, maybe too calm. It was strange seeing myself like that, steady, almost detached. I turned off the light and whispered to the empty room. "You think you've built a kingdom, Nathan? You have no idea how fast I'm about to take it apart." The words didn't sound angry. They sounded inevitable. When morning light hit the blinds, I was already dressed and sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open. The folder labeled Household Receipts was next to me, innocent enough if anyone looked. But inside were documents that could ruin a man's life. Nathan came down in his suit, humming like a man without a conscience. He poured himself coffee, looked at me, and smiled. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "I was going through some numbers for Dad's investment accounts." He didn't even blink. "You and your spreadsheets," he joked, sipping his coffee. "You'd make a great auditor." I smiled back. "Wouldn't I?" The moment he left, I opened the files again. I wanted to be sure I wasn't seeing patterns where there were none. But the more I looked, the clearer it became. Nathan had built an entire financial maze designed to keep everyone blind. Payments disguised as vendor consulting fees, equipment leases, marketing partnerships. He was careful but not careful enough. Every few months, a payment went through an account called Vision Partners LLC. The owner's name? A variation of his own initials. I dug deeper. Hidden inside one report, I found something worse. An investment memo signed by my father's fund manager, recommending a transfer to Summit Ridge for expansion. The signature was a perfect match because it was copied, a digital forgery. He'd used my family's reputation to legitimize his scheme. My stomach turned. I stood, pacing the kitchen, my hands shaking for the first time since this began. It wasn't about an affair anymore. It was about everything. Trust, money, reputation. My name was on legal documents that could tie me to his fraud. That realization hit like a slap. I wasn't just the betrayed wife. If this went public, I could look like an accomplice. I grabbed my phone and called Lydia. She answered on the second ring. Aaron? I need every copy of the transactions you've been holding, I said. And I need you to stop deleting anything he tells you to delete. I already stopped, she said quietly. He's getting suspicious, though. End of quote. Then stay quiet but keep everything safe. I'll handle the rest. When I hung up, I sat for a long minute. My reflection on the laptop screen looked unfamiliar. Someone calculating, focused, not scared anymore. By early afternoon, I drove downtown to the Summit Ridge building. I still had my ID badge from when I'd handled compliance during the company's early years. The front desk receptionist smiled. Hi, Mrs. Walker. Haven't seen you in a while. I smiled back, pretending everything was normal. Just picking up some legal files Nathan asked for. No one questioned me. They never do when you look like you belong. In the elevator, I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. The ride to the 18th floor felt endless. When the doors opened, I stepped into the quiet hallway of glass offices and designer furniture. The place smelled like money and arrogance. Nathan's office was locked, but I didn't need it. I walked straight to the finance department. Lydia saw me before I spoke and quickly stood. Her eyes darted around nervously. Are you sure this is safe? She whispered. No one's watching, I said. Just act like we're reviewing paperwork. She opened her drawer, handed me a small envelope. Copies of the transfers, she said. There's more. He's been using internal funds to pay for offshore accounts. Cayman Islands, Singapore, Zurich. End of 2. How do you know? Because I processed the wires, she said bitterly. He told me it was for client diversification. I checked. The clients don't exist. I slipped the envelope into my purse and straightened my blazer. You did the right thing. She looked terrified. He'll know someone's talking. Then we make sure when he finds out, I said. It's already too late. As I walked out, my heels echoed down the hallway. I could feel eyes on me. People always look when a woman walks with purpose. No one knew that inside my bag was the beginning of the end for their CEO. That evening, I stopped by my father's house again. The lights in his office were still on. He was reviewing the documents I'd left earlier. Without looking up, he said, This is bigger than I thought. I know, I said, handing him the new envelope. He flipped through it, his expression turning darker with each page. He forged investor documents. That's a federal crime, Aaron. I'm aware. You could be dragged into this. I already am. He exhaled, setting the papers down. We'll call a board meeting. But before that, we get everything lined up. Audit, testimony, digital evidence. I'll take care of it, I said. You're sure you can handle this? I met his eyes. He taught me how to survive in his world. He just forgot I was better at it. Ooh. That night, I went home to a man who still believed he was untouchable. He was on the phone when I walked in, laughing, drink in hand. Yeah, baby. It's handled. Investors love me. Of course we're secure. I walked past him, pretending not to hear. I poured myself a drink, then looked at him over the rim of the glass. Good day at work? I asked. The best, he said. Everything's under control. Good, I replied, taking a sip. Keep it that way. Oh, one. He smiled, confident as ever, and went upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen, watching the ice melt in my glass. The house was quiet again. For the first time, that silence didn't hurt, it felt powerful. I looked at the locked drawer where the folder sat and whispered, You wanted a perfect image, Nathan. Let's make sure the world sees it, every crack and flaw. The line between betrayal and revenge had disappeared completely. Now it was just a matter of timing. That evening, the Denver skyline glowed against a pale blue sky, and my car's headlights caught the glass facade of Summit Ridge as I parked outside. I wasn't supposed to be there. But then again, nothing about this week had gone according to plan. I took the elevator to the 18th floor and stepped into the finance department like I still worked there. Lydia was at her desk, typing furiously, her shoulders hunched like she was trying to disappear into the screen. When she looked up and saw me, her face went pale. You shouldn't be here, she whispered. I'm already here, I said, walking closer. You said you had more. She hesitated, then glanced around the office. A few employees lingered, but most had left for the day. She lowered her voice. I can't email anything. He started checking my activity. It got a list of flagged accounts yesterday. That's fine, I said, pulling my phone out. We'll do this old school. How? She opened a folder from her drawer. Inside were printed spreadsheets, each page marked confidential. He's routing company funds through shell entities Vision Partners, SG Ventures, Atlas Consulting. Same routing pattern every time. I flipped through the papers. And Sophie Grant? Lydia's lips tightened. She's not just the side piece. She's the one registering the accounts. All the signatures match her initials. She's in this up to her neck. He's Stow. For a second, I felt that strange mix of disgust and admiration. He'd turned his affair into a business partnership. Efficiency, I guess. You realize if we go public, they'll both go down, Lydia said. That's the point. She stared at me, maybe expecting guilt, but there wasn't any. Only a quiet satisfaction building inside me. I put the papers into my bag and met her eyes. Lydia, I need you to keep pretending everything is normal. Whatever he asks, nod and smile. Just don't delete anything. She looked nervous. If he finds out I'm helping you, he won't, I said. And if he does, he'll be too busy fighting off something bigger. I turned to leave, but she stopped me. Aaron, she said softly, you could have just walked away. Why do this? I paused, my hand on the door. Because walking away doesn't fix the damage. It just lets him think he won. I'm win. Back in the car, I set the papers on the passenger seat and sat for a while, watching the building's lights flicker floor by floor. Nathan's office was still lit. He was probably inside, laughing, drinking, bragging to someone about how clever he was. The thought didn't make me angry anymore. It made me strategic. On the drive home, I called my father. It's confirmed, I said when he answered. Multiple shell companies. Lydia's helping me pull the audit trail. He sighed. Then we move. I'll schedule a closed board meeting. No press yet. Good, I said. He won't see it coming. When I pulled into the driveway, Nathan's car was already there. I sat in the garage for a full minute before going inside. The lights were dim, and music played softly from the living room. He was on the couch with a glass of scotch, flipping through emails. You look tense, he said without looking up. Rough day? Nothing I can't handle, I replied, hanging my coat. You? Same old, he said. Meetings, numbers, egos. You know how it is? I did. I knew exactly how it was. He poured another drink and smiled at me. You know, Sophie was asking about you. I tilted my head. Really? What about me? He shrugged. She said she missed seeing you around the office. Said you always looked so professional. It took everything in me not to laugh. The man was quoting his mistress like she was a family friend. I sat across from him, legs crossed, calm as ever. You should tell Sophie I said thank you, I said evenly. And that professionalism is contagious. He didn't catch it. He never did. He finished his drink, kissed my forehead, and went upstairs. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close, then slipped my phone out and opened my camera. One by one, I photographed every page Lydia had given me. Each image uploaded instantly to cloud storage under a folder titled Vacation Plans. If he ever got suspicious and looked through my files, that would be the last thing he'd check. An hour later, Lydia texted. He just called me, asked if I'd seen you in the office. My reply was instant. And what did you say? That you dropped off paperwork for your father's fund. Nothing else. Good. Keep it that way. The house was silent again, except for the sound of the furnace humming. I walked into Nathan's office and looked at his desk, neat, sterile, everything labeled. His favorite pen sat next to a photo of us from our wedding day. I stared at it for a long moment. We looked perfect back then. Everyone said so. But looking at it now, all I could think was how much effort I'd put into being someone worth respecting while he was already planning how to profit off me. I put the frame face down. Not broken, not thrown. just silent, like me. As I left his office, a thought crossed my mind. Maybe revenge isn't about payback at all. Maybe it's just about balance. And for once, the scale was starting to tip my way. When I turned off the light, I felt something settle inside me, a calm that felt almost like peace. Not because everything was over, but because I finally knew exactly what to do next. The next morning, I woke up before Nathan did. He was snoring softly, one arm sprawled across the bed, like a man who had nothing to hide. I watched him for a moment, his hair messy, his face relaxed. You'd never guess that this was someone capable of corporate theft and betrayal. Then again, monsters rarely look like monsters when they're sleeping. I slipped out of bed and walked downstairs. The house was quiet except for the sound of the coffee machine. I poured myself a cup and sat at the kitchen island, thinking. The board meeting was in 3 days. My father had confirmed it the night before. We'll handle this discreetly. Just act normal until then. Act normal. That part, I could do. I'd been rehearsing for years. Nathan came down a little later, freshly showered, wearing his favorite navy suit, the same one he wore at the gala. I couldn't help but notice the faint perfume on his collar. Not mine. He kissed my cheek. Morning, beautiful. I was thinking dinner out tonight, just us. I smiled. That sounds perfect. He relaxed, completely fooled. It still amazed me how easily he believed what he wanted to believe. The day went by in practiced silence. He left for work, and I got to work on something else, refining the evidence. Every document, photo, and account. Lydia and I had collected now, sat neatly organized on a drive labeled Household Budget 2023. A harmless name for something that could legally ruin him. I also printed 2 copies, one for my father and one to hand over directly to the board. Every line item, every signature, every falsified invoice was highlighted in red. I didn't need to embellish anything. The truth was damning enough. By the time Nathan came home, I had changed into a soft cream sweater and jeans, the kind of outfit that said, devoted wife, not corporate assassin. He walked in holding a bottle of Pinot and a bouquet of lilies. My favorite. He remembered, probably because guilt had a good memory. Peace offering, he said, setting them down. For what? I asked lightly, arranging the flowers in a vase. He smiled. For being an idiot lately. I know I've been distracted. The company's been stressful. I don't want that to spill into us. Us. That word again. It almost made me laugh. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I saw him the way investors would soon see him, as a man who'd mistaken deceit for intelligence. You're trying, I said softly, and he seemed relieved by that. We ate dinner, drank wine, and even laughed once or twice. I asked him about work, careful to sound curious but not suspicious. He bragged about a new deal closing soon, which, judging by Lydia's documents, was entirely fake. When he mentioned Sophie, he didn't even flinch. She's doing great work, he said casually. We make a good team. I'm sure you do, I said, smiling just enough. After dinner, he pulled me close, murmuring something about reconnecting. I didn't resist. Let him think everything was fine. Let him believe I was still his loyal blind wife. Later, as he drifted to sleep beside me, I whispered under my breath, You have no idea what's coming. The next day, I put the second part of the plan in motion. I met with Lydia in the parking garage under Summit Ridge neutral ground, no cameras. She handed me a flash drive and a sealed envelope. What's this? I asked. Copies of his personal transfers, she said, and something you might want to see. Have? Inside the envelope was a printed receipt jewelry purchase 3 weeks ago. $5,000, charged to a company card. The buyer? Nathan Walker. The recipient? Sophie Grant. Guess she got her bonus early, Lydia said dryly. I almost laughed. He really doesn't learn, does he? Not the type, she said. We stood there for a moment, the low hum of cars above us filling the silence. Lydia looked uneasy. You're really going through with this? I'm done living in his version of the truth, I said simply. He built a story where I was just background decoration. I'm rewriting it. When I got home, Nathan was on a call in his office. His voice carried through the hallway, calm and confident. Don't worry, Sophie. Everything's handled. After Monday, we'll be in the clear. I stopped by the door, unseen, and felt something icy slide through my chest. In the clear, he said. As if I were the problem he needed to get rid of. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and took a long sip. My hands didn't even shake. That's how I knew I was past anger. That night, I played my role better than ever. I laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when he spoke, leaned into him when we watched TV. If acting were a sport, I would have won an award. When he went upstairs, I stayed behind, opened my laptop, and sent one final email to my father. All ready. Everything confirmed. Board meeting Monday 10 a.m. His reply came within minutes. Good. I'll handle the logistics. You just stay calm. I shut the laptop and looked around our pristine living room, clean lines, minimalist furniture, the illusion of stability. He thought he owned this world. He thought he built it from the ground up. But every brick, every chair, every inch of it was funded by my father's investment, my family's trust, and my silence. And that silence was officially over. When I climbed into bed beside him, Nathan turned toward me, still half asleep, and whispered, "I love you." I stared at the ceiling and said quietly, "I know." In the dark, my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It sounded like someone who had already moved on, someone waiting for justice to wake up before dawn. By Friday morning, everything was ready except one thing: final proof linking Nathan directly to the offshore accounts. I had fragments from Lydia, copies from the shared drive, and my father's confirmation that the board was on standby, but I needed one undeniable link. The opportunity came when Nathan announced he'd be working late. That phrase had stopped meaning what it should years ago. He said it casually, tying his tie in front of the mirror, completely unaware that I could now predict his lies better than his schedule. "Big night?" I asked, pretending to scroll through my phone. He smirked. "Just some business dinner. Investors want updates." "Right," I said. "Don't forget your receipts." He didn't notice the bite in my tone. He never did. Once his car disappeared down the driveway, I changed into jeans and a hoodie, tied my hair back, and went straight to his office. The password to his desktop was still the same. Walker 2020. The kind of password you pick when you think no one will ever challenge you. The desktop opened to a maze of folders. Some were labeled with normal names: projects, payroll, reports. Others were more creative. Vacation, invoices, old stuff. Inside vacation was a folder labeled private. I clicked. A spreadsheet appeared, one that didn't belong in any legitimate business archive. Account transfers, VP and SG, the header read. Columns filled with dates, wire amounts, and international bank codes. My heart beat faster with each line I read. Cayman Islands, Zurich, Hong Kong. And there it was, the smoking gun. Each transaction signed electronically by N. Walker, approved by S. Grant. The man had documented his crimes as if he thought no one smart enough would ever look. I copied everything onto a flash drive and took photos of the screen for good measure. The light from the monitor cast a blue glow over the room, and for a moment, it felt like standing inside the wreckage of my own life, beautifully arranged, perfectly lit, and rotten at the core. I opened his desk drawer next. Inside was a jewelry box. I didn't even need to open it to know what was inside. The receipt Lydia had given me flashed in my mind. $5,000 Cartier. Client gift. I lifted the lid anyway. A diamond bracelet sparkled against black velvet. I almost laughed. The man was cliché enough to buy her jewelry with stolen money. I took a photo and put it back exactly where it was. Before leaving, I checked his email. I knew his password there too, because I'd helped him set it up years ago. Most messages were boring. Meeting updates, vendor invoices, investor threads. But then I found one marked private, delete after reading. It was from Sophie. "Can't wait until it's just us. You promised we'd make it official soon. I'm tired of hiding. S." Attached was a photo her at some beach resort, wearing the bracelet. My bracelet now, technically. I saved everything and shut down the computer. My pulse was steady, my breathing normal. Revenge, it turned out, didn't feel like fury. It felt like discipline. When Nathan came home hours later, he smelled like expensive wine and guilt. I was sitting in the living room, half watching a documentary, pretending not to care. "You're up late," he said. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. "You?" "Long night. Productive, though." He loosened his tie and poured himself whiskey. "You should have come to the gala last week. It would have been good for you to be seen." I looked at him over the rim of my glass. "Oh, I've been seen." He didn't get it. He smiled, kissed my forehead, and went upstairs. When the house went quiet again, I took the flash drive and put it inside a manila envelope addressed to James Porter, confidential. On the front, I wrote, "Evidence. Verify everything before the meeting." The next morning, I dropped it off at my father's office before heading to the coffee shop near the downtown courthouse. Lydia met me there, sitting by the window with her laptop. She looked exhausted, her hair tied back, dark circles under her eyes. "Everything's backed up," she said, sliding a small external drive across the table. "All the financials, vendor lists, payment chains. I even got copies of deleted emails from IT archives." "You're a miracle," I said, tucking it into my bag. She shook her head. "No, I'm just tired of pretending people like him deserve to win." We talked for another half-hour quiet, cautious, making sure every file was mirrored and hidden safely. I promised her anonymity and protection once this was over. She believed me, maybe because I finally believed myself. When I got home, Nathan was out back watering the lawn, pretending to be suburban and normal. The irony was almost poetic. He waved at me like the world hadn't started burning under his feet. "Morning," he said cheerfully. "Want to go to brunch tomorrow?" "Sure," I said. "Why not?" He smiled, completely unaware that by Monday morning, the company he built on fraud and lies would be stripped from him in front of every investor he'd ever tried to impress. That night, I stood by our bedroom window, watching the streetlights flicker against the glass. The folder with every shred of evidence sat locked in my briefcase beside the bed. Nathan was downstairs on another business call. I didn't listen this time. I didn't need to. I already knew every word he'd ever say. Instead, I focused on my reflection, calm, unflinching, ready. The version of me that used to cry or beg for answers was gone. This one was sharper, steadier. And in less than 48 hours, she'd walk into that boardroom with a smile and the kind of truth no one could spin away. When Monday morning arrived, the city was still half asleep, but I was already wide awake, dressed, composed, and running entirely on adrenaline. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp. I'd barely slept, but I didn't need rest. I needed focus. Nathan was in the shower when I left. He thought it was a regular start to a regular week. He didn't ask where I was going. He didn't need to. He assumed every world revolved around him, even mine. Downtown Denver looked different that morning. Sharper, colder, like the air itself was holding its breath. I walked into Porter Equity's marble lobby and took the elevator to the top floor. My father was already there, along with 3 major investors. Their faces were tight, tired, and ready for answers. "Morning," Dad said quietly, handing me a folder. "You have everything?" I nodded. "Every cent. Every forged document. Every fake vendor." He gave me a brief look, half concern, half pride. "This is going to be messy." I smiled faintly. "Good. He likes messy." At precisely 10, the conference room door opened, and Nathan walked in, freshly shaved, confident, holding his leather briefcase like it contained the meaning of life. He was wearing the same navy suit he'd worn the night he humiliated me. How poetic. His smile faltered slightly when he saw me. "Aaron, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, my father spoke. "We'll get straight to the point. We've discovered serious financial irregularities within Summit Ridge." Nathan froze mid-step. "What?" Dad continued, calm and deliberate. "Over $3 million in unaccounted transactions, fake vendor contracts, and offshore transfers, and your signature is on every single one." Nathan's laugh was hollow. "That's ridiculous. There must be some mistake." "All." I leaned forward, sliding a printed spreadsheet across the table. "Like this one? Vision Partners LLC paid $220,000 for consulting services last quarter, except Vision Partners doesn't exist. The account is registered in the Caymans under your initials." His eyes flicked to the page, then to me. "You've been in my files." "I've been in the truth," I said evenly. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of the projector. On the screen behind me, I clicked through evidence, one document after another. Bank transfers, emails, digital signatures, even Sophie's messages, each one linking her deeper into the fraud. "Funny thing," I said, turning back to him. "You didn't just steal from the investors. You stole from my father. From me. From the very people who built this company with you." Dad's tone turned razor sharp. "You used my daughter's name, my fund's reputation, to justify embezzlement. You'll answer for that." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Robert, come on. You know me. This is business creative financing, not theft. You think I'd risk everything I built?" "You already did," I said, my voice low but steady. "The moment you thought you could cheat and get away with it." The lead investor, Patricia Hayes, spoke next, her voice cool and precise. "We've seen enough. Given the evidence, I move to suspend Nathan Walker from all operational duties pending full investigation." End quote. "Seconded," said another. Nathan turned to me, panic flickering behind his eyes for the first time. "Aaron, you're really doing this? You're siding with them? After everything we've built?" I held his gaze. "We didn't build anything, Nathan. You used me as scaffolding. I just stopped holding you up." He slammed his hands on the table. "You're destroying me." "No," I said, calm as ever. "You destroyed yourself. I'm just documenting the process." Dad stood. "Effective immediately, Nathan Walker is suspended. Security will escort you from the premises. The board will appoint interim leadership until further notice." Nathan laughed bitterly. "You think you can replace me that easily?" "Actually," Patricia said, glancing at my father, "we already have someone in mind." Dad turned toward me. "Someone who knows the company inside out, who's proven her integrity, and who's not afraid to clean up what's been corrupted." The room went still. "Aaron Walker," he said. "Effective immediately. You're appointed acting CEO of Summit Ridge." Nathan's face went blank. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Finally, he whispered, "You planned this." I smiled faintly. "No, Nathan. You planned it. I just read the fine print." Security entered quietly. He didn't move right away, just stared at me, as if trying to find the wife he used to manipulate. She wasn't there anymore. As they led him out, he turned and said, "You'll regret this, Aaron." "Probably," I said, "but you'll have more time to think about it than I will." When the door closed, the room exhaled collectively. Patricia leaned back, studying me. "You kept your composure beautifully. Most people would have screamed." "I've had practice," I said. The investors started discussing logistics, media containment, forensic audits, temporary PR strategies, but I barely heard them. I was too focused on the sudden quiet in my chest, the kind that comes not from peace, but from closure disguised as calm. When the meeting ended, my father stayed behind. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I looked out the window at the skyline. "I think so. It's strange. I thought I'd feel rage or satisfaction, but I just feel unfinished." "That's what justice feels like sometimes," he said. I nodded, gathering my files. The chair Nathan used moments ago was still pushed slightly back from the table, as if he might walk in and reclaim it, but he wouldn't, not ever again. Dad walked me to the elevator. As the doors closed, he said softly, "You did the right thing, and you did it the right way." The ride down was silent. My reflection in the glass doors looked calm, controlled, untouchable. Maybe for the first time in my life, I looked exactly like the woman I was supposed to be. When I stepped into the lobby, Rebecca, the board's executive assistant, approached me nervously. "The press is already calling," she said. "They're asking who's running the company." I smiled slightly. "Tell them it's under new management." She nodded. "And Nathan?" I looked toward the front doors, where 2 security guards escorted him into the parking lot. His shoulders slumped, his arrogance gone. "Tell them," I said. "He's taking an extended leave." "Oh." The automatic doors opened, sunlight spilling across the marble floor. I walked through it, heels steady, pulse calm. the weight finally shifting from my shoulders to his. The world outside was loud, bright, alive, and this time, it was all mine. The news broke faster than I expected. By noon, the story was everywhere. Summit Ridge, CEO, under investigation for fraud. They used Nathan's professional headshot, the one he insisted looked trustworthy and approachable. The irony was delicious. At home, the silence felt heavier. Reporters were already parked near the front gate, their cameras waiting for a glimpse of the man who used to brag about being untouchable. Nathan came storming in around 2 o'clock, tie undone, hair disheveled. I'd never seen him look small before. "You set me up," he hissed, slamming the door behind him. I didn't even flinch. "You set yourself up, Nathan. I just stopped cleaning up after you." "You think this is over?" he spat. "They're saying I embezzled company funds, that I—" "You did," I interrupted, my voice sharp but calm. "We have the files, the signatures, the shell accounts. And if you're about to lie to me again, don't waste the energy. The board has everything." He stared at me, chest heaving. "You don't understand what you've done. This will ruin me." I looked at him steadily. "Then you should have thought about that before you took my father's money and funneled it through your girlfriend's business." That hit him. His face went pale, his mouth opening, but no words came out. He wasn't shocked that I knew. He was shocked that I said it out loud. "She told you?" he asked finally, almost whispering. "She didn't have to," I said. "You left a trail even a half-asleep intern could follow. Sophie Grant was just your mirror. You both wanted power, but neither of you earned it." He rubbed his forehead, pacing like a trapped animal. "I can fix this," he muttered. "I can talk to the board, make them see." "They've already seen," I said quietly. "And they voted. You're done." He stopped moving. The weight of it finally hit him. Not the suspension, not the humiliation, but the permanence. He was finished. When he spoke again, his voice broke a little. "Aaron, I made mistakes, but we can rebuild. You and me." "There's no we," I said. "Not anymore." He looked at me, eyes searching for the woman he thought he could manipulate. But she was gone. "Where's Sophie now?" I asked. He swallowed. "She's gone. She stopped answering my calls this morning." Of course she did. The moment things went bad, she bolted. Loyalty had never been part of their arrangement. He laughed bitterly. "Guess we both lost something." I shook my head. "You lost everything because you thought you were smarter than everyone else. I just stopped pretending not to notice." He sat down on the couch, hands in his hair. For a moment, he looked more like a boy who'd been caught than a man facing ruin. "I loved you, Aaron," he said. "I still do." I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "You loved control, you loved admiration, you loved the version of me that made you look better." He didn't respond. Maybe because he finally realized I was right. The phone rang my father's number. I picked up. "It's done," he said. "The auditors confirmed everything. Federal agents will be at the company tomorrow morning to collect evidence." "Will they need to come here?" I asked. "Possibly. Be ready." Nathan's head snapped up at that. "Agents?" I hung up without answering him. He stood abruptly. "You're turning me in?" "No, Nathan," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "You turned yourself in the moment you hit confirm transfer." He clenched his fists. "You're enjoying this." I met his anger with silence. I wasn't enjoying it. I was just done being the casualty in his story. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke the tension. Lydia stepped out, holding a folder. She'd come to drop off the final documentation for the audit team. Nathan saw her through the window and froze. "She's working with you?" "Yes," I said. "The woman you bullied for 2 years helped bring you down. You should have treated her better." "I do." He muttered something I couldn't hear, then walked to the bar and poured himself a drink with shaking hands. "You'll regret this," he said quietly. I picked up my keys. "No, Nathan. I'll remember it." That night, the house felt both familiar and foreign. I sat on the back porch, watching the horizon burn with the colors of a fading sunset. It felt symbolic, the end of something, but not the kind that required mourning. Inside, Nathan was on the phone again, pacing, bargaining, making calls to lawyers and investors who no longer picked up. His voice sounded smaller each time I heard it. When the doorbell rang, I already knew who it was. Two men in dark suits introduced themselves as federal investigators. They were polite but firm. "Mrs. Walker," one said, "we have a warrant to collect evidence related to Mr. Nathan Walker's business operations." Nathan came rushing out from his office, pale and sweating. "You can't just come into my home." They showed him the paperwork. "We can, sir, and we will." He looked at me like I'd betrayed him all over again. I didn't say a word. They took his computers, his phones, his ledgers. They asked me a few questions, and I answered every one calmly, clearly, truthfully. When they left, the house was silent again. Nathan stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the absence of everything he'd built. For a long moment, we didn't speak. Then he whispered, "You've destroyed me." I looked at him one last time. "No, Nathan, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure the world finally noticed." I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The house still smelled like him, but for the first time, it didn't feel like his anymore. Outside, the red glow of the sunset had faded into night, and the quiet hum of the city filled the distance. Somewhere between that silence and the sound of sirens far away, I realized something simple and final. I wasn't angry anymore. He was falling, and I didn't need to push. The morning after the investigators left, the house felt hollow, not sad, just emptied out. The hum of Nathan's phone, his laughter echoing from the office, the smell of his expensive cologne clinging to every surface, all of it was fading, like smoke after a fire. I stood in the kitchen, drinking coffee from the same mug I'd used the morning. He told me I wasn't good enough for his company's gala. Funny how something as simple as ceramic could hold that kind of memory. But this time, it didn't sting. It just felt finished. The first call came from my father. "You're officially in," he said. "The board voted unanimously last night. Acting CEO, effective immediately." I let out a quiet breath. "I thought they'd need more time." "They don't have time. The company's bleeding. You're the only one who can stabilize it." I looked around the kitchen, my silent witness to everything that had fallen apart. "Then let's rebuild it," I said. By noon, I was back at Summit Ridge. The same building that once felt like Nathan's empire now felt like something waiting to be reclaimed. When I stepped through the glass doors, the receptionist froze for a second, unsure whether to smile. Then she did. "Good morning, Mrs. Walker." I smiled back. "It's Miss Porter now." The title rolled off my tongue, easily, not bitter, not triumphant. Just true. The first department I visited was finance. Lydia stood near her desk, surrounded by silent stares from her coworkers. When she saw me, relief washed over her face. "I didn't think you'd come back here so soon," she said. "I didn't think I'd have to," I replied. "But here we are." I gathered the team in the conference room. They were nervous, half because of me, half because they still couldn't believe Nathan was gone. "I know this week's been a disaster," I started. "I also know you've been working under impossible pressure for years. That ends today. We're rebuilding this company with transparency and integrity. If anyone here helped Nathan commit fraud, you can walk out now. No questions asked. But if you stay, we start over." Silence. Then one by one, heads nodded. No one left. After the meeting, Lydia followed me to my new office, Nathan's old one. His nameplate was already gone, replaced with a blank plaque. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" she said softly. "Not really," I said, walking to the window. "He was just borrowing it." I turned back to her. "You've been through enough. I want you to head compliance and auditing from now on. No more hiding in the background." Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Completely." For the first time since I met her, she smiled like she believed she could breathe again. "Thank you, Erin. You earned it." The rest of the day was a blur of meetings, phone calls, and cleaning up the chaos Nathan left behind. I spoke with vendors, investors, and employees, all of them anxious but willing to give me a chance. Rebuilding trust, I realized, wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up, calmly, consistently, and refusing to let fear dictate every move. That night, I stayed late in the office. The building was empty, except for the cleaning crew and the low hum of the air vents. I looked around at the stacks of paperwork, the framed awards Nathan had left behind, the glass walls that once symbolized his power. I opened the top drawer of his desk, now mine, and found an old photo of us from the early years. We were smiling, holding champagne, standing in front of the Summit Ridge logo the day the company went public. Back then, I thought success meant standing beside him. Now I knew better. Success was standing on my own. I set the photo down and turned off the desk lamp. The city outside shimmered through the glass, vast and indifferent. It didn't care who ran this company, but I did. By the end of the week, the first investor call took place. Reporters waited outside, hoping for a statement. I kept it short. Summit Ridge isn't collapsing, I said. It's correcting. We're still here, and we're rebuilding with honesty. The statement spread fast, not as scandal but as stability. For the first time, my name appeared in the headlines without being tied to Nathan's. The night after the call, I came home to find his car gone. He'd packed what was left of his things and disappeared quietly. No confrontation, no apology. Just silence. I walked through each room, expecting to feel something: grief, nostalgia, maybe even anger. But what I felt was peace. Every trace of him that once filled the air now felt like empty space waiting for something new. In the living room, a single document sat on the table, the divorce papers I'd left on his desk days earlier, signed and dated. Next to it was his wedding ring. I stared at it for a moment, then picked it up and dropped it into the trash. When the clock struck midnight, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped out onto the balcony. The night air was cool, and Denver's skyline stretched out in the distance, full of light and motion. Somewhere out there, Nathan was probably sitting in some bar, telling himself it wasn't his fault. But that was his story to live with, not mine. Mine was already moving forward. I thought of Lydia, of my father, of the employees who had chosen to stay. For the first time in years, I wasn't holding my breath. I was rebuilding, not for revenge anymore, but for recovery, the kind that doesn't need applause, just endurance. The hum of the city below was steady, almost comforting. I closed my eyes and whispered into the night, "You were right, Nathan. I wasn't good enough for your company's gala." A small smile tugged at my lips. Turns out I was too good for it. Then I went back inside, turned off the lights, and let the quiet settle not as emptiness, but as peace earned the hard way. The day Nathan's trial began, Denver was unusually bright, the kind of clear winter morning where the sunlight feels too honest for people who've built their lives on lies. I wasn't there for the spectacle, though. I didn't need to be. I'd already seen enough of Nathan's performances to last a lifetime. Still, curiosity has a pull of its own. Around 10 a.m., I got a text from my father. He pled not guilty, his lawyers arguing financial mismanagement, not fraud. I almost laughed. It was such a Nathan move, redefine the crime, until it sounds like a misunderstanding. I replied simply, "Doesn't change the evidence." At the office, Summit Ridge had finally started to breathe again. Lydia was thriving in her new role. The staff seemed lighter. There was laughter in the break room again, and the word audit no longer made anyone flinch. Every time I passed Nathan's old office, now mine, I felt a quiet sense of balance, like the company was slowly shifting back to center. But the calm didn't last long. Around noon, the building security called my line. "Miss Porter, there's a man asking to see you. Says he's your husband." I froze for a second. "Ex-husband," I corrected. "Send him to the lobby. I'll meet him there." Nathan was waiting by the glass doors, wearing a dark gray suit that looked a little too expensive for someone facing prison. His hair was shorter, his face thinner. The arrogance was still there, just buried under exhaustion. He smiled when he saw me. "You look good." "I'm running a company, not a courtroom drama," I said. "What do you want?" He sighed. "To talk. Just 5 minutes." I nodded to the security guard. "We'll sit by the window." He followed me to the small seating area overlooking the street. He looked at the skyline, then back at me. "You did it," he said. "You actually rebuilt the company." "I did what you said I couldn't," I replied. "Turns out I didn't need your approval." He gave a half smile. You always had a sharp tongue. You always gave me reasons to use it. He looked down at his hands, rubbing the edge of his wedding ring finger. I didn't come to fight. I came to say I'm sorry. It wasn't the first time I'd heard those words from him, but something about the way he said them this time, quiet, flat, almost human, made me pause. I never meant to hurt you, Aaron, he continued. I got caught up in trying to look successful. You know how this world is perception over truth. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could keep it all separate. The money, the lies, Sophie. I stopped him. Don't say her name. She's not your scapegoat. You both knew exactly what you were doing. He nodded, a flicker of shame crossing his face. I know, and now I'm paying for it. They're offering a plea deal 5 years minimum, maybe less if I cooperate. Then you should take it, I said. He looked up at me, his eyes red. You really don't hate me, do you? I thought about that for a second. No, I don't hate you. I just don't need you anymore. He stared at me like he was hearing a language he couldn't speak. You were always stronger than me, he said quietly. I just didn't see it. I stood. You didn't want to see it. He exhaled, looking out at the street. I don't expect forgiveness. But I hope someday you'll remember I wasn't all bad. I gave a small nod. Maybe someday. But not today. He stood too, smoothing his jacket. You're still cold as ever. No, I said. I'm just finished. As he walked out of the building, I didn't feel anger or triumph. Just closure, clean, unceremonious, overdue. That evening, Lydia stopped by my office. They got him on record, she said. Full confession. The plea deal's locked. 5 years, maybe 7. I nodded slowly. Justice doesn't always look dramatic, does it? She smiled faintly. Sometimes it just looks quiet. Ardent. I looked around the office, the same room where he once sat, convinced he owned the world. The air felt lighter now. I picked up a framed quote from the shelf, one I'd kept since college. Character is what you do when no one's watching. Let's make sure this place never forgets that again, I said. Lydia grinned. Already working on a new ethics policy. Good, I said. This time, we build something real. After she left, I sat alone, staring out at the Denver skyline. The city lights blinked like quiet reminders that life goes on whether you're ready or not. My phone buzzed a message from my father. He took the plea. Case closed. Proud of you, kid? For a long moment, I just stared at those words. Proud of you. They hit harder than I expected. Maybe because I'd spent so long trying to earn pride from the wrong man. I turned off my phone and leaned back in the chair. Outside, the reflection in the window showed a woman who looked calm, collected, and entirely her own. I whispered to no one in particular. You told me I wasn't good enough. I just proved I was better. The room was quiet, except for the faint sound of the wind brushing against the glass. Somewhere out there, Nathan was preparing for a prison cell. Somewhere else, Sophie was probably pretending she had no idea what had happened. And somewhere deep inside me, the last piece of the anger I'd carried for years finally let go. When I stood and gathered my things, I didn't look back at his name scratched off the glass door. That chapter wasn't mine anymore. The elevator doors closed with a soft hum, and as I descended floor by floor, I realized something unexpected. Revenge hadn't just been about his downfall. It had been about my return. Not as his wife, not as his victim, but as the woman who built her own name from the ruins of his lies. And this time, no one could take that away. 6 months later, the Denver skyline looked different, not because the buildings had changed, but because I had. I used to drive through this city feeling like a supporting character in someone else's story. Now, every street, every glass reflection, every late-night meeting reminded me that I'd written a new one, mine. Summit Ridge was thriving again. The financial wounds Nathan left behind had healed, and the investors who once doubted the company were now sending flowers and handwritten notes. Strong leadership, one letter said. Exactly what this firm needed. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same board that once clapped for Nathan's arrogance now praised my restraint. But I didn't crave the applause. I craved the quiet proof that competence lasts longer than charm. That morning, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the neckline of a sleek black dress. The same hotel where Nathan's infamous gala took place was hosting a charity benefit this time, under new management. Mine. The invitation had gone viral across business networks. Summit Ridge Charity Gala, a celebration of renewal and resilience. Reporters had been calling it the comeback event of the year. I wasn't nervous. I'd been through worse than a ballroom full of people pretending to admire each other. But I'd be lying if I said walking into that same place, the same room where Nathan once told me I didn't belong, didn't mean something. When I arrived, the chandeliers gleamed exactly as I remembered them. The air smelled like champagne and money. But this time, I wasn't standing at the sidelines. I was at the center of the room, where my name, not his, was on every guest list. Lydia greeted me near the entrance, stunning in emerald green. "You clean up well, boss," she said, grinning. "You too," I said. "Let's make sure no one sets this place on fire metaphorically or otherwise." She laughed. "I'll keep the reporters distracted." The night unfolded smoothly. The speeches were heartfelt, the donations generous, the music elegant. My father gave a short toast brief. Warm, proud. "This company nearly fell apart," he said, raising his glass. "But tonight, we're not just celebrating survival, we're celebrating integrity and the woman who brought it back." The room erupted in applause. I smiled, but not the kind of smile meant for the cameras. It was quieter, smaller, but infinitely more real. Later, as the night began to fade into soft music and slow conversation, I stepped outside onto the balcony for a breath of cold air. Denver glittered below a city that had seen my humiliation and now witnessed my peace. I wasn't alone for long. Lydia joined me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "You did it," she said, handing me one. "We did it," I corrected. She leaned against the railing, smiling. "Funny how things come full circle. 6 months ago, you were hiding evidence in a laundry hamper. Now you're hosting the same gala he banned you from. Life has a good sense of irony," I said. She nodded toward the ballroom. "You think he's watching the news tonight?" "Probably," I said, sipping my drink. Men like Nathan can't resist stories about women they underestimated. A soft breeze brushed against my hair. The music inside shifted to something slower classic jazz, warm and familiar. I closed my eyes for a second, letting it sink in. This wasn't revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about proving myself right. When I stepped back inside, people greeted me with the same admiration they once reserved for Nathan. But the difference was clear. Their respect wasn't for power, it was for substance. At the end of the night, as guests began to leave, my father found me again. "You know," he said, "you've turned this company into something better than I ever managed." I smiled. "You gave me the chance. I just made sure I didn't waste it." He chuckled. "Your mother would have been proud." The words landed softly, like the final piece of something falling into place. After everyone left, I stayed behind for a while, walking through the empty ballroom. The tables were half cleared, the lights dimmed to gold. On the stage, the Summit Ridge logo shimmered faintly simple, strong, unpretentious. I ran my hand over the nearest chair, remembering the night Nathan stood here, surrounded by applause, while I waited outside, humiliated. The memory didn't hurt anymore. It just existed a before to my after. I looked up at the chandelier, the same one that once cast its harsh light over my lowest moment, and I smiled. "Guess I finally made it to your party," I whispered. Outside, my car waited. The driver opened the door, and I paused for one last glance at the hotel. Somewhere inside that building's walls was the echo of the woman I used to be, the one who thought love and loyalty could fix greed. She was gone now, replaced by someone who understood that dignity doesn't need permission. Back home, I kicked off my heels, poured the last of the champagne into a glass, and sat by the window. The city lights blinked like quiet applause. My phone buzzed messages from employees, friends, even reporters. But one notification caught my eye. A new email from an unknown sender. Subject line: "You looked radiant tonight. I'm glad you finally got your moment." End quote. No signature, but I didn't need one. I deleted it without reading further. Some ghosts didn't deserve space in the new chapter. I turned off the phone, took a sip, and leaned back. The quiet was no longer empty, it was earned. And as the night stretched over Denver, I realized that revenge hadn't been the ending of my story, it had only been the rewrite. The real ending was this peace, power, and the certainty that I'd become everything he said I couldn't be. When the first light of dawn touched the glass, I smiled and whispered to myself, I was never not good enough, he just wasn't worthy. Thank you for watching my story. If you love cheating stories, revenge stories, and true lessons about husband betrayal that turn heartbreak into power, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear where you're watching from, and maybe your story will be the next one I tell.